Hello there, I'm Sakaven, and welcome to the MTG Raw Talk podcast, the show where myself and my co-host, Prince of Asphodel, talk about cEDH, the optimized side of everyone's favorite Magic the Gathering format. No edits, no cuts, just our raw opinions as two experienced players. If you would take a moment to click that like button and subscribe for further content, we would greatly appreciate it. And with that, let's hear it. So we saw a large cEDH tournament happen this weekend. Tier 1 Con in Denmark, hosted by Tier 1 MTG. I thought that was pretty cool, especially because they allowed players to use playtest cards as proxies. So there was no budget restrictions at this tournament, although only experienced players could really show up thanks to its location and being the first of its kind.
That's kind of interesting because when I heard that the meta was more ad nauseum heavy, that immediately some exclamation point came up in my brain because I've been to other cEDH tournaments where all proxies are allowed and people bring the wackiest stuff that usually makes the meta just wide open and enormous. But the fact that it was limited to just the players that are most well known in the community, now it's kind of clicking as to why the meta was so laser focused is because not everyone was able to attend with their pet decks and all of this stuff that usually goes on.
Yeah, it had this sort of the same energy I remember from going to like Pokemon National Championships or GPs in Modern. Is that people metagame even up to the moment before the tournament, and then teams they go in and play all the same list. Like Into the North, they all of them were on Codie in the tournament, which was kind of the story since it went undefeated and won the day, well both days.
Yeah, which is actually kind of cool, but I suppose the statistics would show it's a lot more probable to do that if the sample size is just so much bigger than it usually is, especially being piloted by some of the best players there.
Yep, Sick Robot from Into the North took it all home thanks to that deck. Very interesting to see because he won many of his games by turn one going explosively, playing Codie and passing, and then having the other players not necessarily understand the threat level of that card after he plays it, and then just winning on turn two. Essentially, all it needs to do is play and activate Codie.
Well, as we all know in this format, that surprise factor of your opponents underestimating the power of your cards is probably the biggest weapon you can bring
Mm-hmm.
to a table. So, at the very least, the deck's efficiency will drop a little bit just based on its result at this tournament, assuming we all learn.
Yeah, they people actually learned during the tournament to leave up their mana. Like everyone just played a land and passed the second time the deck hit the table on turn one. Just play Cody and everybody's just like land pass, land mana pass, and then he did
That's
not go
amazing.
off because everyone else was waiting for it.
So Cody is a 3 mana legendary artifact creature. He's a 1/4 and says you can't cast permanent spells. And for 4 mana, you can tap it, add all 5 colors to your mana pool, and then when you cast your next spell this turn, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery with lesser mana value. And until the end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put each other card exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is kind of like cascading almost.
Yeah, it is.
So the deal with Cody is you want to activate this and then cast anything, or is it specifically ad nauseum you're casting?
No, you activate it and cast any one drop, and then you can essentially cascade into Profane Tutor and find Ad Nauseum and cast it.
I see. So you only need, let's say if you use that blue, you cast a Ponder, you cascade into Profane Tutor, find ad nauseum, and you still have that black, red, green, white. So as long as you have one other black source, you cast ad nauseum.
Yep.
That is pretty deadly, and the fact that he only costs colorless means you can get him out on turn 1 pretty frequently.
Yep, and the alternative is actually Bring to Light. If you draw Bring to Light, or if you get it, you can cast it for all 5 colors thanks to Codie and just find ad nauseum.
Oh, because Bring to Light just casts the card you find, doesn't it?
Yep.
How cool. So I'm assuming this deck has just an insanely low CMC cost, so you can get most, if not all of your deck into your hand and then use free mana to assemble the Oracle combo.
Yeah, you can take a look at the VOD later of the finals. He did do Bring to Light into ad nauseum, drew about 30 cards, and won the game.
For sure. That sounds pretty sweet. So I'm guessing then that once you're going off for the win, you have to find some way to remove Codie before getting Oracle into play, or do you actually win more commonly with Brain Freeze?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to find the list now. Oh, let me just look up.
I love trying to figure out these top tier decks.
Yep.
Still wondering just how relevant that you can't cast permanent spells line really is. I'm thinking it actually probably leads you away from things like Jace, Labman, and Thassa's Oracle, because we've seen how easy it is to win with Underworld Breach and Brain Freeze.
Mm. Ah,
As
here we
long as
go.
there's some way to discard most of the deck that you drew with ad nauseum, you can probably fill your graveyard really quickly.
I found Sick Robot's list. The deck plays 6 creatures total.
Amazing. Let me
So
see if I can
many.
guess them.
Let me link it for you so you can take a look as well.
Is Codie included in those 6 creatures?
No, he's the 7th.
Okay. Then
Yeah,
we
see if you
probably
can
have a
guess.
Thassa's Oracle.
Yep.
We probably have a Dockside Extortionist.
Yep.
Let's see, it's 5 colors, so
Let
I
me
want to
hint
say Grand
all
Abolisher might
four.
be one.
Nope. All 4 of the remaining creatures are also in Klothys.
Oh, wow.
That's your hint.
So some of them might be Spirit Guides, Simeon and
Yep.
Elvish.
Both spirit guides.
Wow, so that's 4 creatures right there.
Yep.
Hmm. I'm 50-50 on whether the deck is running Laboratory Maniac.
Nope.
Okay, no Laboratory Maniac. Is one of them Esper Sentinel?
Nope. The remaining 2 are also in Klothys.
Ah, that's right, that's right.
This
Let me
deck is
think.
all speed. There's no chill.
Speed makes me think Orcish Lumberjack.
Yep.
Wow, look at that. There's one more creature. I give up. I can't think of this last one.
Tinderwall.
Ah, that's kind of nuts. Those last 2 cards haven't really been associated with ad nauseum decks in the past.
Yeah. Um. So then it seems like normally the line is cast Codie, activate Codie, cast a spell that removes Codie from the battlefield, like Void Snare, or a ritual like Infernal Plunge, or Culling the Weak, to make mana, but also let you cast permanent spells, like your mana rocks.
Oh,
And then you go off with it. It's got a couple different lines. It has Breach and Lion's Eye and Brain Freeze, but it also has Thassa's Oracle and Consultation. And those are the ways you go off with ad nause. Like, I guess whichever one you can put together first on resolving ad nauseum.
so 1 second here. Is that spell that you use to remove Codie the same one that triggers
Yep,
the
it is.
Codie's effect and finds the tutor?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, well, that's kind of cool.
Yep.
That's actually really simple when it comes down to it.
Alternatively, you have other cards that You have certain cards that spin the wheel again, like Claim the Firstborn. Sneakily, you can target your own Codie and untap it, so that you can go
Oh
again.
yeah.
See the yep, Emerald Charm untaps Codie. Let's see if there's any more other than those two.
Ah, I see. But the way to remove Cody needs to be 1 mana, otherwise you won't hit Profane Tutor.
Yep.
Haha. This deck runs Emerald Charm.
Yes, it does.
I see a snapback in here, for example.
Yep.
That if you want to get rid of Cody that way, I guess you could get around it by casting snapback and responding to it by activating Cody. Then let it go to your hand. This way, snapback both gets rid of Cody, but also doesn't trigger
Oh
where
yeah,
you want to one
that's
drop to trigger
exactly
it.
that's exactly right. And then you cast a 1 drop, and because Cody is a delayed trigger, it doesn't matter if he's in play anymore.
Oh man, this is so cool. It's so streamlined based on how the format has evolved.
Yep. Speaking of like the meta evolving, almost like such a high percentage of the players at the tournament were on some sort of Turbo Nas.
Yeah,
They're
yeah. Ad
just
nauseum is, in my opinion, the most powerful card in the format, but it doesn't do great in a blind meta. It'll still do well, but if everyone's teching against the strongest decks and really bringing whatever, Ad nauseum doesn't get a chance to shine in the same meta as where people are also always playing Ad nauseum. And the reason for that is because if 3 people are playing Ad nauseum, the chance of that fourth non-Ad nauseum player winning is just so low.
yeah.
And we knew about this because of the the meta that had evolved in Finland earlier,
Mm-hmm.
where people reported that it was just all ad nauseum over there, and anyone that would bring a non ad nauseum deck couldn't really beat 3 other Turbo Nas decks. So that was really good information to have when looking at a tournament like this. When at first hearing that almost all the ad nauseum decks made it to some of the final games, that was kind of was a big question mark for me. But after hearing that, well, it was kind of selective who was able to attend this tournament. Now it makes a lot more sense because the meta's less open.
Yeah.
Oh, the land base is really interesting. I think it runs 3 of the depletion counter lands.
Yeah, all it plays 3 of those. It plays every soul land it could really fit, because Cody's just a 3 drop colorless cost. These can all enable you to cast it, or alternatively, you want to cast them on turn 1, but then these help you activate it on turn 2.
This deck is so all in.
Yep.
It has to basically prey on the fact that no one knows what it's doing, what it's up to.
Yep, and I'm interested to see where it goes now that everyone knows what it's doing.
I don't think this list is long for the tier 1 world. I don't think this is going to be the best ad nauseum deck for a long stretch of time. And part of that reason is because it doesn't do as well when well, this is all speculation, of course. I'm using what I think I know of the format. I could, of course, be wrong. But it looks like this deck, compared to other ad nauseum decks, won't do as well when the meta isn't all just other ad nauseum decks. Because if the meta is all one thing, you're better off doing that one thing but a turn faster. But when the meta is a whole bunch of things, sometimes you just can't get away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to disrupt. You just don't let Cody resolve. And if you do let Cody resolve, oops, his ability is a mana ability, so
Well, Now that I'm thinking of the ways to defeat this deck, if I'm not playing a turbo ad nauseum deck, my next step is looking at how many ways it has of removing Stony Silence, Null Rod, and Collector Roof.
Yeah, it's got. Let's
I
see
don't see
if I
many.
can. Yeah, so it has Void Snare, Chain of Vapor. In terms of spells that also trigger Codie, Void Snare, Chain of Vapor. Um,
Snapback hits. Oof.
Nature's Claim hits a couple of them as well.
Yeah.
Um, Suspend hits several of them. Abrupt Decay. Uh, yeah, Snapback. And then it has some free counter spells, but
Yeah, I see that. It even runs Misdirection, which is a
yeah,
budget favorite of mine.
it is. Yep. I think yeah, its plan is to it can wait also. It just can't it can't grind very well at all. It's definitely a diamond cannon.
Yeah. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm in a more stacks oriented kind of pod. Sure, if I'm 1v1ing a Cody deck for some reason and I play a Stony Silence, I don't feel very safe. They could just end step, Abrupt Decay, untap, win on me. But if it's a full pod and suddenly one person has an oof and one person has a null rod, now it's a lot harder for this type of deck to have two pieces of interaction and then enough resources to go off.
Yeah, so the meta
Even though,
response
well,
to
it doesn't need many to begin with.
yeah.
So that might not be fully true, but what I'm saying is the more opponents that are trying to stop it, the better for those opponents.
Yeah, it might be that the meta response to this tournament and the story of Ad Nauseum is that stacks and mid range rise in popularity to answer it, and that's it's like the opposite. So we had a downward spiral of when there's all ad nauseum's the only thing to be doing. But when there's not much ad nauseum, you don't want to be playing ad nauseum.
Yeah, I think for online tournaments, this result bodes well for mid-range decks because this will raise the popularity of stack stacks. And with more stack stacks around, the ad nauseum decks won't be able to win as quickly. And in longer games, that's where mid-range really thrives. This is good for decks like Kinnan and like Paco.
Yeah, and even Thrasios Timna mid range.
Sure, yeah. I feel pretty okay about this.
I also feel pretty okay with Minsc, which is my current deck that I'm brewing. You know, I'm always brewing something.
Yeah.
I have some recent tech to share on that one. So Minsc he's a 3/3 for 3 Naya. He's the best thing to happen to Naya in the game so far. When he enters, you get Boo, a 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. And then you can pay X as a sorcery until end of turn. Target creature you control has base power toughness XX and becomes a giant in addition to its other types. So it's it doesn't sound like a sack outlet, but it's a sack outlet because you can pay 0 and make target creature you control 0/0 and have it die. And so we have a Naya Hulk deck. So several people have been brewing it, including me. Um, the first Hulk line that people determined would be usable would be Snoop, Conspicuous Snoop, the 2-mana goblin that has activate abilities of goblins on top of your library, and you can cast goblins from the top of your library. There's a way you can
Right.
do it to where you sack Hulk, you get say Grand Abolishers, Conspicuous Snoop, and Goblin Recruiter. Then you can search for any number of goblins and put them on top. So first you find Torch Courier. Torch Courier says sacrifice Torch Courier, target creature gains haste. So you play Torch Courier for 1 off the top of your library, sack it, give your Conspicuous Snoop haste. The next card you stacked is Kiki Jiki. And because Kikijika's ability says copy target non, you create a copy that's a token that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. It doesn't say another, so you can tap Snoop to copy himself since he's non-legendary, and do that as many times as you want. Get a million tap Snoops, and then you, with the last one you copy Recruiter, shuffle your library, and put a Mog Fanatic on top, and then you can sack all of your goblins to kill your opponents. But I don't like that line because it has 5 cards, and Torch Courier is a bad card, and I don't like Goblin Recruiter or Conspicuous Snoop in my deck either. For that matter, I don't really like having Kiki-Jiki. They seem like liabilities to me, especially because you can't really go off when they're in your hand.
Yeah, that's a lot of slots devoted to one combo.
And it also costs a red mana after you kill your Hulk. So I spent some time and figured out a better Hulk line for Naya. Turns out Naya is kind of the best Hulk colors there are. Right now, it's easy. You kill Hulk. You go get Gerard Weatherlight Hero. He is a 4 mana 3/3 with first strike, human soldier. He says when Gerard dies, exile it and return to the battlefield all artifact and creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. And then you also get Safi Eric's daughter, a 2 mana 2/2 human scout, who says sacrifice Safi. When target creature is put into a graveyard this turn, return that card to the battlefield. So how this works is you can then sacrifice Safi to her own ability, targeting Gerard, putting a delayed trigger on Gerard that says when he dies, return him to the battlefield. And then you kill Gerard with Minsc, and he dies, and there's 2 triggers that go on the stack. 2 dice triggers, which means you can order them any way you want. So you can put Safi's trigger on top to resolve first and put Gerard into play. And then Gerard's trigger doesn't actually care if he's still in the graveyard when it resolves. He'll simply return Safi and Hulk and whatever else went to your graveyard to play. So then you establish a loop where you can kill Hulk an infinite number of times. And there's plenty of ways to win with that, but the most compact I've found is just getting a Mog Fanatic. Mog Fanatic's the best bad card that you can play to win the game.
Yeah, I love that description.
Yep. And then I have one in the... I'll post the list in the description here, but I have one backup. In case Mog Fanatic is removed, I put Anger in the deck. He was my final choice as the backup. Because Anger says, as long as Anger is in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. So, there's plenty of mountains in here. You put Anger into play with Hulk, kill Anger, your creatures have haste, and then you go get every other creature in your library. And then you get Emil plus Dockside Extortionist to create infinite mana. And then you use Minsc to give all your creatures a lot of power, and then you just swing out.
Huh. Yeah, that's a lot of cards people know are good, but aren't used to seeing, seeing play in decks. They just haven't really found a home yet. Maybe they
Yeah.
have now.
Yeah, this deck finds a home
So,
for a lot of cards like that.
real quick, what you mentioned about Mog Fanatic. Once you establish the Safi and Gerard loop, that means you can recur anything that you kill an infinite number of times, right?
Yeah.
Because Gerard, who always comes back, resurrects anything else that died that turn.
Yep.
Which means anything that either sacks itself to get an effect or has an effect when it dies has an infinite amount of triggers if you so choose.
That is correct. Or ETBs also work because Minsc can kill it and you'll bring it back and it'll trigger.
Fascinating.
Yeah, Mog Fanatic was literally the most efficient one I could put in there. You can also just play Solitude, Blink Solitude, exile all your opponent's creatures. So here's my plan that I've put into this list for when both win the game combos are gone. Say they take out Mog Fanatic and they take out Anger.
Okay.
you can, using either Emil plus Dockside or Gerard plus Safi, to get infinite ETBs on any creature. So what I've put in there is that you can use Masked Vandal to get rid of all your opponent's artifacts and enchantments, and use Solitude to get rid of all their not lands, all their creatures. And then you establish Mila Crafty Companion plus Rurik plus Drannith Magistrate plus Collector Roof plus Sanctifier Envec plus Dryad Militant plus Esper Sentinel. And then you just pass the turn. And then the next turn you use your infinite mana to attack because you weren't able to grant haste.
Okay.
But
So if anyone tries to get rid of Rurik basically with a spell, you can just blink it because you have access to infinite mana and infinite Emil triggers.
Yep.
So the only way anyone could win is with Thassa's Oracle and enough spells, or I guess few enough spells to not get killed by Rurik.
Essentially, although even then you have Endurance, and you can just blink Endurance to stop a Thassa's Oracle combo.
Oh yeah. You need to exile everything in your graveyard as well. That's actually kind of cool. I want to try and take a game to this state.
I'm sure we will on stream sometime.
I sure hope so. I can't wait to do battle again. I need some revenge wins.
Yeah. So beyond that, the deck has some mid-range threats like Rurik, like Toski, like a Johnny Vengeant, my favorite card in the game.
A Johnny Vengeance. I have yet to see that one actually. I saw it in the list, but I never saw it in play.
Yep, he's really good at tapping down important mana producers every turn. And then he can also Lightning Helix anything. And he can also destroy all lands target player controls if we're in a stacks game.
I guess so. I'm not as sold on that one, but I guess we'll have to see once he hits play in one of our games.
That one's more of a pet card.
For sure.
And then we have Mila Crafty Companion, who's in there because she can draw cards whenever a permanent we control becomes the target of a spell or ability opponent controls. If they try to remove anything, you draw a card.
Can you remind me where that card is from?
It's from Strixhaven.
Oh, okay. Because at first I thought you were saying Emil, like the unicorn, but
Nope.
I remember that's not how the rest of the name on that card goes.
Yeah.
I didn't actually remember that card existed.
Yeah, I discovered it and I was like, whoa, this has to be good somewhere. Because also on the back, the Planeswalker, it's a Luca Planeswalker for 6, whose -2 reanimates a creature and gives a haste and exiles at the beginning of the next upkeep. Of your next upkeep. So he's just like, if your Hulk gets put into the graveyard without dying, which happens, or if you needed a key piece back from the graveyard, you can play Luca and bring it back. He also draws cards with his +1. You can discard a creature and draw 2, or discard and draw 1. So he's a really good mid-range threat. On the back of a fox that draws a lot of cards. So
That's so cool. This card is just cool looking. I
is.
just didn't know it existed.
Yep. And beyond being a sort of mid-range deck when it's really more of a fast combo with a mid-range subplan because there are so many one-card combos in this deck, probably more than most decks.
Yeah, see, when you gave me the short explanation of why this deck was good, that's what attracted me the most. Can you go over those one card combos?
Yeah, we'll start with Academy Rector. 4 mana, 1/2. It says when Academy Rector dies, you may exile it. If you do, search your library for an enchantment, put it into play, and then shuffle. So it's a 4 mana creature. Any tutor like Finale of Devastation, Eldritch Evolution, Chord of Calling, those put it directly into play. Use any tutor, put it in your hand, play it. It's 1 card. You kill it, you get Pattern of Rebirth, and you can put it on the Boo token or another creature that you won't need for the rest of the turn since you're about to end the game. Then you kill that creature with Minsc, triggering Pattern of Rebirth, which is an enchantment that says when the enchanted creature dies, search your library for a creature and put it into play. So you go get a Hulk, and then you kill Hulk and win the game. So that's the first one card combo. The second is just putting Hulk into play. You can cast him from your hand, which is the least efficient way to do it. You can activate Magus of the Order, which is a really nice way to do it, since it only costs 1 mana on the turn you do it.
Oh, yeah.
You can put a Hulk into play with Natural Order, another great way to do it. And then you could just draw your Pattern of Rebirth, or a way to get it, like in Lightning Tutor. So all of those, you just need one of those effects to win the game. Oh, there's Imperial Recruiter, which searches for Academy Rector.
But that puts it into your hand, right? So at that
Yeah.
point, it's more of a chain.
More of a chain.
Well, that's pretty cool. And I'm sure many of us would be thinking that that's cool and all, but a lot of these one card combos either take more than one turn or take a significant amount of mana for a cEDH combo.
Yeah, that's where the color combination is useful. I can have the best ramp and dorks in the game. So it packs every 1 mana dork it can play. Other than Ragavan, because I'm not super convinced of that card right now. But I could be convinced with some prodding. And it's got
Yeah, makes sense. From my personal experience, I've only played 3 times against the deck, and I've lost 3 times against this deck. And the way I noticed that it won was not by being faster than the rest of the pool, but it was by having threats that were both not easy to detect and also not easy to answer based on all of these texts we put in our decks to answer the more popular combos. So usually what would happen is there's 3 Thassa's Oracle decks and this Minsc Meat deck, the Naya Hulk deck.
yep.
And one of the Oracle combo guys tries to win and gets stopped because everyone's prepared. Someone else tries to win with Ad Nauseam and gets stopped because everyone's prepared for it. And then on a turn that's sometimes considered to be too slow for cEDH, the Naya Hulk deck just wins, either with backup ready or with some kind of anti-counter magic or something that no one was expecting.
Or
And
silence.
that's just a product of both people not expecting the cards to win that way and just not being ready to handle them even if they are expecting it.
Yeah, I've been narrowing down all of my decks to this state that I like a lot, where they're win second decks. They're not just decks that, like, any deck would be happy to try and win second, but these decks are designed to take advantage of that moment. Where
Right.
you have just enough ramp to, at first you enable your interaction on turn 1 and 2. And then by turn 3 you have enough mana to go off if you can, or wait it out. So in terms of anti meta interaction, one of my favorite cards right now is Dryad Militant. It's a 1-drop 2/1, green white Dryad Soldier. It says if an instant or sorcery would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. That stops Breach. It stops Anala. It stops a lot of value engines. And it's on 1
Oh
mana.
yeah. I've been using Dryad Militant since the old formats of standard and modern.
Yep, it's a
It's
weenie.
a great one. Yeah, 2-1 for 1. Very efficient.
Yep, and then of course I've got Collector Roof and Null Rod. Um,
Classics.
yep, those are just really good. They stop Breach because they stop Treasure, and free mana rocks and Lion's Eye Diamond, and they stop Thassa's Oracle because they stop their acceleration to get there. And then there's Dranith Magistrate. Everybody knows how good that card is now.
Yeah.
Then there's Sanctifier Invec, which is my graveyard hate of choice in the creature slot because I'm a graveyard deck. I need my dice triggers. So,
You can't run Rest in Peace.
yeah. Can't run Rest in Peace. Sanctifier also. What's cool about Minsc is that you read Sanctifier. It says protection from black and red. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards that are black or red from all graveyards, and then if a black or red permanent spell or card not on the battlefield will be put into a graveyard, exiled instead. You'd think, oh, that exiles Mog Fanatic and Gerard. Why would I play this card? It also exiles Anger. Because I can just kill it. Actually, hold on. That's funny. I guess I can't play it. So, at first I was thinking I could just kill it with Minsc, but it has protection from red, and Minsc is red.
Oh yeah, because it's not a blanket effect, huh?
It's not a blanket effect. Okay, well, we freed up a slot while we were talking about it. That's always fun.
Indeed.
But the other graveyard I have is Endurance. Endurance is my favorite card from Modern Horizons 2 and probably the best card printed in that set. Because it stops all the combos in cEDH right now. Any ad nauseam deck is going to win via Breach or Thassa's Oracle. No exceptions. And Endurance stops both. Now, an ad nauseam player would be able to answer it, usually, if they have the right counter magic. But people seldom expect it to just come out and shuffle their graveyard in so the Thoracle doesn't win the game. Also, you just cast it in response to an Underworld Breach. They lose their graveyard. No value. Then we've got Solitude, free creature removal. That's pretty good. That's that's more to remove stacks pieces than it is to stop people from winning the game. Then there's Ruikthar. He's great anti-meta. Deals 6 damage to any creature that casts any player that casts a non-creature spell. Obviously, you can't storm off with this card in play. It doesn't stop Thoracle as much, but that's alright. We have plenty of answers to that. Then we've got Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast. Classics. And Silence. Silence has been really good recently in the meta. I saw it a lot at the tournament today.
I completely agree. Silence is a house of a card.
Another great response to a main phase tutor or a Underworld Breach or an Ad Nauseam. Doesn't technically stop Thoracle alone. If someone just has Thoracle plus Consult without any additional spells, you can't stop it with Silence alone. But it's still good enough to include, especially because it protects our combo. Start a turn with Silence, everyone knows you're going to try to go off. And if they don't, and they don't counter it, then great, you just win. And then there's Mandate of Peace, which it's not much of an anti-meta card, but if someone's combat step is really important, like they're using a Tymna to draw their last piece to win the game, you can end the combat phase and prevent them from casting any spells. You can stop a Najeela player like that as well. You can stop a Golo. It's got some utility. And then there's Tybalt's Trickery, 2 mana, counter any spell. It's just a good card. Then there's Sentinel Totem. That's another one of my unique inclusions. It's a 1 mana artifact. It says when it enters, scry 1. And then you can tap it and exile it to exile all cards from all graveyards. It's an answer to Breach. At 1 mana and gives you some card selection.
Is that one scry the reason you use it over Tormod Script?
Yeah, it is. Also, it gets all graveyards, not just one player's graveyard.
Oh, so you can accidentally exile your own stuff.
If I get to the point where my stuff's in the graveyard, it's not as good. But if I get to the point where I'm playing stuff, then I should have already cracked it.
Okay.
Also, if I really have to, I can use Endurance, shuffle my graveyard in, and then exile everyone else's. If that's a play pattern that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've got Another unique inclusion, Ground Seal.
Oh
Ground,
yeah, I didn't know that card made it into your list.
yeah, it recently did. Ground Seal does not stop my combo because none of my abilities target cards that are in graveyards. They just put delayed triggers and reanimate them when they die. But it stops people from playing cards like Noxious Revival to disrupt me. I haven't really seen the full extent of what else it disrupts, but I'll be interested to find out in the coming days and weeks.
Gotta be very good against anything trying to win with World Shaper Dragon.
World Gorger Dragon? Yeah.
World
Oh,
Gorger,
it's
my
also
bad.
really good against Razakats and Razakat decks, Reanimator decks.
Yeah, that's true. I still have yet to see very many of those decks ever, but Razaketh is pretty good, so I'm sure we'll see more at some point.
Yeah, I've been seeing some online. Other than that, I just fill out the deck with good Naya cards. Another one of my
And
favorites
you know,
is. Hmm?
I'm sorry, speaking of enchantments that don't interact with your combo, Ashes of the Abhorrent might be one.
Yep, that's been a consideration for a while now. It also, weirdly enough, gives me infinite life whenever I go off.
Right,
I
which
like.
is,
I kind of chose Ground Seal's draw card over that, but yeah, Ashes does stop Breach. And it's definitely in the maybe board right now. This list is still a fledgling, not very sure of all the slots yet. But I think I finally figured out the best combo to put in this deck.
yeah, which is the first most important step.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, I'm actually considering Ashes of the Abhorrent for my deck.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually low on life.
That would help you, yeah. Another card I want to talk about is Fiery Justice. One of each Naya, a sorcery, deals 5 divided as you choose among any number of targets, and then target opponent gains 5 life.
Oh yeah, that's kind of like the Naya Toxic Deluge.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually really like that card in Commander. No complaints from me. The cost is way less than it is in a 1v1 format.
Mm-hmm. And I say all this, and I haven't mentioned our tertiary game plan, which is Boo Beats.
Ah, the boo beats.
I put Sylvan Scrying and Crop Rotation in here because establishing a Gaia's Cradle and pumping Boo every turn and slapping people in the face for trample damage is a really effective strategy when nobody's winning the game.
Yeah, actually, it happened quite a bit in just the few games we played, and the game didn't actually end that way, but it sped it up to the point where people were making more panicked decisions because the end was in sight.
Yep. This deck also plays cards that just get better when you have a Minsc in play, like Toski can pump him, so he's not just a 1/1. Or you can use Boo to deal combat damage and draw cards. Got Anger. You have a way to consistently put him in the graveyard by killing him with Minsc. You got Esper Sentinel. You can increase his power as a way to deter interaction when you need to resolve a spell.
Because Esper Sentinel draws you cards equal to his power.
No, because they have to pay mana equal to his power, or else you draw a card.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yep. So it's been really fun to play so far, and the naming convention is Minsc Meat, because it's a Protean Hulk deck.
Yeah, that's a great name. I wish my names were that good.
Yeah. And Klothys has been doing well recently too. Um, a player by the name of Ben who plays for Kingdoms TV, one of the smaller content channels, but they started doing cEDH recently. Well, they have several thousand subscribers, so I guess they're not small. Um, and I commented on a video, be like, "Do you take suggestions?" and I gave him Klothys, and he picked it up, and we've been talking about it ever since. A similar deck actually appeared at the Tier 1 con. It was a Lord Windgrace lands deck.
Oh, yeah.
And it used Decree of Annihilation and Obliterate in the list. It was sort of a milder version of this deck. More of a true mid-range, whereas this is just its own thing.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of list before, Lord Windgrace. I was never able to make it work, but it always seemed so cool to me.
Yeah. So we'll be seeing a deck tech from me on Klothys soon. I'm working on the primer right now, writing out the whole thing. But it's another one of my stories of building a deck that has some work to do in terms of winning a lot of cEDH games, but no casual player will ever let me play this deck. Never ever. I have Apocalypse, Jackal Hops, Devastation, Obliterate, Decree of Annihilation. I have Blood Moon. I have Magus of the Moon. I have Kiki Combo. I have Null Rod. All of those things add up to one severely not casual game experience.
I think it's a great one.
Yeah. Ben actually figured out a new little line. He had a pretty bad hand, but he had a guy as well coming off suspend, and he had a red elemental blast and a Tybalt's Trickery in the graveyard because he was the control deck that game, which was kind of funny. And he cast the blast and then countered it with Tybalt's Trickery, and then flipped into a Zealous Conscripts.
Oh, wow. That is interesting.
And then we also wanted to talk about the prevalence of just how every deck seems to end up with Thoracle or Breach, and most of the time utilizes ad nauseum to get there. It's kind of what I would describe as a slow homogenization.
Well, I think that's only true in the secluded metagames in tournaments, because that's not what I've noticed in some of the larger tournaments.
Yeah?
Although, I mean, I guess a lot of these strategies do run those cards, but there are a lot of strategies that don't don't bother so much with that kind of line. Like Kinnan is one example, Paco is another, any food chain list, I guess
Although,
any Razaketh list.
yeah, Food Chain is another example, but the funny thing is that all of those decks also play Thoracle. The way they get there is different, but that's the way they end the game.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with Thassa's Oracle being the way to win in this format right now.
Yeah. You know what I realized today that kind of made me a little bit sad? So
What's that?
I've been brewing many lists that take advantage of the Ashaya combo with Quirion Ranger. And I had Selvala, the other Selvala, Ashaya as a commander, tried several different iterations. And then I realized today, oh, Kinnan is just probably the best commander for that.
Well, Kinnan is exceptionally powerful.
Yeah, but he enables the combo. I don't need a card that taps for 2 mana because Kinnan becomes the forest and taps for 2 mana because of his ability.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's a future for that combo in that deck.
I don't know if there is. because it has some better things to do.
It's something I'd be interested in exploring in the future. I'm working on a few projects of my own until then, but
Yeah.
I'm keeping
Uh,
I'm keeping tight-lipped about them until I figure out the state of their effectiveness.
yeah. Give me your thoughts on the things that you've been working on.
Well, I've been working on trying to not attack from as much of a predictable, I guess, angle in trying to mix up either what my win condition is, what my deck lacks, and therefore what hate pieces that allows me to play, and also just tweaking the speed of whatever I'm playing at. If you play a deck that's really quick, like Godo, for example, then you're limited in the way in which if the correct place to win just never happens to be in your turn, you're kind of locked out of winning if people are always holding up interaction. But if there are faster decks at the table, then you might just fall into that place where someone tries to win and gets stopped, and then all of a sudden now you get the green light, you know? So I'm trying to find a little in between spot because currently I have a deck that probably isn't as fast as it could be. But secondly, I also could go for a more unpredictable line that people might not be prepared to fight off than just Thassa's Oracle,
Mm.
or Ad Nauseam for that matter.
And what is that line?
I don't have one.
Oh, you're still on the search for it.
Yeah,
I see.
I'm not really searching as much as I am testing different alternatives
Mm-hmm.
or looking to. That's my next endeavor here.
I'm flipping through cards to figure out the last slot for to replace Sanctifier in my list, and I just came across Evolutionary Leap. It's one of my favorite cards recently. It's just 2 mana enchantment. You pay one, sacrifice a creature, reveal cards until you hit a creature, put it in your hand, and put the rest on the bottom. I'm thinking that I wonder if you could make a commander deck that whose only creature is Thassa's Oracle, and you
Oh,
use a token or your commander, or a token that's made by your commander, to find it every time with effects like that. And you could also use Polymorph. Have a blue-green base.
yeah, but at that point, I don't know if it's more effective than a paradoxical deck,
Mm.
a divergent transformations.
It would be less stormy.
It would, just because it's missing red.
No, just because it's uh, you you would just be going for Thassa's Oracle plus Consultation.
Yeah, but you still need that other piece to get you consultation, whereas you don't with transformations.
That's true. I haven't seen Transformations anywhere recently.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been looking into, but I'm not sure if it'll go anywhere.
Hmm. There was that Wart the Raid Mother Divergent Transformations deck that you showed me a
Yeah, I
while
remember
ago.
that from way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those decks that's really expensive to build and is not the biggest payoff in the world. Your deck is just like okay in the cEDH community.
Yeah.
Along, yeah, it doesn't really have the greatest time fighting other cEDH decks. It can win a game or two, but for what it costs, you're better off getting something else, honestly.
I see. Oh, I also wanted to talk about Partner as an ability and how it affects the meta.
Okay. Yeah. Because partner kind of exploded as soon as it was in the game, because the most competitive decks just kind of they want colors more than anything, and partner lets you customize that better than anything else. And then as long as some of those partners are good at something, whether that be card advantage, mana, being a combo piece, or being a combo outlet, then you just kind of get the best of everything.
Yeah, and it has the strange effect of slowly um, pushing out legendaries that are not combo pieces, because it's hard to justify playing a commander that's not a combo piece if there's partners that exist in those colors. Because why would you start your game with one card in the command zone when you can start with two?
Yeah, exactly.
The only exception being five color, because there are no partner pairs that offer five color.
Yeah, I guess not.
They did keep it to maximum of two colors. But it's interesting because, like, I go into all of my commanders have been combo pieces, except for, well, I guess Klothys counts too, because I can't justify playing anything that isn't a partner otherwise. The other Naya deck you can build um, is just essentially Blood Pod, and that also has black. Or you can build a Chromatana, pure stacks, win-conless stacks. I think Minsc has a good home in that he can break through that paradigm by being a sacrifice outlet. There are no other sack outlets in this color combo.
Yeah, I agree.
Sack outlet plus aggro damage is a pretty good combination.
I completely agree. You actually did kill someone in the games that we played together. I don't know if you've killed anyone else since.
No, yeah, I killed him because he had the stacks that was stopping me from winning. I think I made what was it, like 22 mana?
I don't remember. I just remember someone being at one life and you killing him.
Oh, at one life. Yeah, I don't recall that, but I'm sure it happened. I'm trying to think of other ways you could arrive at a similar conclusion at a similar speed to the rest of the meta without using Oracle or Breach. Hmm.
Similar speed would be tricky. Usually anything that's faster has to sacrifice a lot of back resilience,
Mm-hmm.
such as Selvala, Brostorm, for example, or Godo, or Storm decks like, I
Oh,
guess, Anya,
Birgi,
Birgi.
Anya,
The
Sakashima. Although that one also wins with Breach and Thoracle, so.
Yeah, that sounds like more of a meta deck to me than one that sacrifices
Oh,
resilience for speed.
Kodama Sakashima is another one of those decks that can go as fast but sacrifices its um, interaction and resiliency for it. Oh, there's also Orvar, the All Farm. He's another super fast combo, kind of one dimensional though. Although I like that deck. I think it's fun to make infinite islands.
That does indeed sound fun. But I think you also want to target different things if you're going into different tournaments. I don't think I would have done very well in this tournament that just passed because I'm pretty well equipped to fight ad nauseum decks, but not well enough to where I could take on two or three of them and not lose to one for sure.
Yeah, although don't discount their ability to interact with each other. Um, that's how Kennen won its games, and how um, there was this blue farm deck that was able to win because, like, sure, it was itself a Turbo Na historical deck, but all four players were on that strategy, and the other three players sat there and disrupted each other. And then there was that turn where they were all tapped out and had forgotten about, you know, the other player, and he was able to win through that.
Yeah, yeah, this goes back to one of those ideas that's so important in this format, and that's how easy it is for your deck to go off on the turn that you need it to go off, not on just on the turn that you think you're going to need it to go off. And this includes after you've been stopped once, maybe. Maybe this includes earlier on than you're used to winning, because openings will pop up when you least expect them. So being able to have a deck that's ready to win in most situations is also really important.
Yeah, I really like how Minsc fits in that role right now, because I can drop in an early Minsc and wait for the right opportunity to strike.
Yeah.
Um, and the color combo kind of pushes me into some pretty good disruption that works early more than it works late. I guess things like Oof and Null Rod and Draenith Magistrate are good in the early game.
Yeah. And the rest of your deck seems to work pretty well in the late game after that. Because I remember playing a game where a lot of us loaded up on stacks pieces onto the board to make it so that nobody could really win. And your Naya deck ended up coming up on top anyway.
Yeah, having this combination of colors in this particular way lets me play big spells that other decks choose not to play. I mean, I have things like Rurik Thar and Toski.
Yeah, you had a more card draw, a bigger board, and also more mana to work with by the end of by the end of the stalemate when we were coming out of it.
Yeah. I think I might just put in Ashes of the Abhorrent for that slot.
That's kind of what I was thinking because it fills a similar role.
Yeah.
It's just sadly not tutorable like Sanctifier was.
Yeah. I do get Enlightened Tutor, though. Although, if I need to tutor a thing to stop Breach, I just get Dryad Militant, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I guess they don't really have a an answer to Dryad Militant that doesn't answer the enchantment anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly haven't played on that side of the matchup in a while. I could use some games.
Yeah. Yeah, just gonna stick in Ashes. Ashes does not stop this combo at all. Hmm. What else is interesting right now? Oh, back to partners. Um, I have sort of grown to dislike the mechanic because of its tendency to push out interesting cards and force players to choose the uninteresting but generically powerful partner commanders.
Yeah, I feel that.
Tuna and Thrasios is the ultimate example. Neither of them has much interesting going on. They both just say draw card. They're efficient, and that's all you need.
Can confirm that's all you need.
I think it's a lot more fun to watch decks like Orvar, decks like Codie, even do well because they are interesting and they do one unique thing.
Yeah, that's true. And I think if partners didn't exist, it would be a lot easier to detect one or maybe two or three commanders that are by far above everything else. But because there are partners, it's more about the strategy than it is the commander,
Yeah,
which
I
is in a
mean,
bit against the spirit of the format as it was in conception.
a little bit. You can also argue that partners give you opportunity for more customization of the deck itself, but I would push back against that because in cEDH specifically, I don't like them because they're sure there's an opportunity to play different cards in your 99 based on your colors without necessarily changing the partners themselves, but that's not always optimal. Usually there's a solved deck for each partner combination,
Yeah.
which is what you're working to fight against right now with your Thrasios and Timna. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't know if that one has been solved.
Well, every now and then you just get the opportunity to have to solve things again because everything just shifts out from under you.
I guess that's what happened with Breach and, um, in a way, Dockside Extortionist, shifting other decks toward red.
Yeah. And yeah, white's not as necessary anymore. Really, the only thing you want white for is silence, and I guess Timna in the command zone. And those are both they're pretty important, but I think red really overtook the color white in cEDH as a backup color at least.
Yeah, I
And
won't.
that that makes things kind of interesting because Timna was on its own a better card than something like File Smasher or even Chrome.
Yeah,
So I don't know. It's always kind of interesting to see how partners get shaken up based on colors instead of how good they actually are, even though both are always a factor.
yeah. I will say that Dranth Magistrate is up there in power level as well.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I agree with that.
On Reddit, people had multiple posts be like, "This is the cEDH new Power 9," detailing a lengthy list of cards that they would consider, and Dranth
Oh,
Magistrate's at
yeah,
the top of a lot of those lists.
I actually kind of liked that post, not because I liked the list, but because I liked the idea of considering new cards to be of the new Power 9. That just kind of appealed to me.
Yeah.
Not that it would actually do anything. I just think it's a fun thought experiment.
Mm-hmm. As a player, I've avoided playing blue and black for whatever reason. I did not like it. I didn't like the. I didn't like to play blue and black. Instead, I like to play against blue and black. Um, but a moment today made me a little bit maybe question it a little bit, and maybe be willing to brew into blue a little bit. And that was the fact that Codie plays Bring to Light. And that's like one of my favorite cards back from Modern.
Yeah, it's such a cool one.
And it would be interesting to try and push some of the strategies I already use into blue and see what happens. Mainly with Ashaya. I want to see if I can maybe break her in a blue green base deck. Maybe Kinnan, maybe some Teamer pair.
Yeah, I haven't really given that much thought, so there's some room for experimenting there.
Yep. I've always liked Yasova Dragonclaw. She's the 3 mana green. Well, she has Teamer color identity from Fate Reforged,
Right.
and she's the one that she's like 4/3 with trample, and at the beginning of combat on your turns, you can steal a creature with CMC less than her power and give it haste and untap it. So it seemed like an interesting way to abuse, perhaps, Dockside plus blink effects. You can take
actually,
other people's dorks, steal Timna, draw cards.
I guess she's one of the commanders that I certainly thought about her and discarded her in the past, but every few cycles with more cards added into the format, it's worth revisiting cards like that and seeing if they have a new place in the format.
Yeah. I also took a look at Essica, God of the Tree. She's the 5-color identity, but she's mono green on the front side. She has vigilance and taps for 1 mana of any color, and then she gives other legendary creatures the ability to tap for 1 mana of any color. I was thinking of ways to abuse that. Didn't come to any conclusions yet. And then I also like Velomachus Lorehold. He's the Boros dragon from Strixhaven. He's got a flying trample and haste, or flying vigilance and haste. One of the two. 7 mana, 7/7. And whenever he attacks, not damage, whenever he attacks, you get to look at the top 7 and pick any instant or sorcery with CMC less than his power. No, he's a 5/5. But yeah, you look at the top 7. Get any instant or sorcery with CMC less than his power and play it for free. I thought that might be an interesting alternative to Winota. More of a spell-based control deck.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Then again, he is
Seems a
7
little
mana.
hard. Seems a little hard to pull off in those colors.
Mm-hmm. We'll see where things go from here, though. You have anything to add to this episode before we wrap up?
No, not really.
Again, I'll post our lists in the comments below in the chat. I'm sorry, description of the video, so you can see the Minsc Meat deck, the Klothys Apocalypse deck, and what Daniel's got for TNT at the moment. And then we'll see y'all next time on the MTG Raw Talk podcast.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
All right, I'm Sakaven, and this is Prince, and we'll see you next time.